Hello, my name is Kenny Molina, and this is my final critical journal. And this is going to be the last critical journal that I'm going to be talking about. And this is going to cover about five different modules, I think. And this is going to be the last week of me talking about the modules, right? And we're going to go on to module one. So, about Hoteria studies, right? Okay. I was going through like the module, right? And this section takes intersectionality to a different level. I first thought that the word hoto was just the insult, but now it's redefined hoto for Spanish for queer, right? And it's defined for pride nowadays, and it's more of an identity rather than an insult, right? Hoto is just the Spanish word for queer. Even queer in English used to be an insult and even redefined for proper identity, right? One fact I didn't know until recent was the origins of the word hoto, which comes from jail cell J in a Mexican prison where effeminate men are being kept in according to text, right? And this is where I read. This is a new thing that I learned about is that it's actually like a place, right, where the word comes from, and it's not just by like people. I used to have a lot of friends who were in the LGBTQ plus. They were fun to be around with for a while. They were Chicanx, so I got to meet a lot of diversity and work with them in high school. Some were nice and some were very talented in what they do. I used to work with some friends who were doing great in acting and also artistic projects. Um, I got to hear experiences from them and knowing the meaning of Hoteria culture, right? Oh yeah, and specifically high school theater, right? I met a lot of people from there who were like LGBTQ. Truly, I experienced laughter with them, and they were fun to be around with. Almost everywhere I see, it's stuff about related to the LGBTQ, and even opening up about Mexican heritage, right? And I wanted to talk about like the Call Me Hoto thing, Quiero que me ames Hoto. Uh, that's like the whole like poetry of like the renewing of a new identity, right? And I even see like stuff with the Mexican flag and the trans, and this is like something you would see like a rally or something. And this is like something I see it online and stickers, and there are like examples of like representation. All right, so I want to get to module two, feminist Chicanx movements. I personally think that this is a very pivotal moment for women this time, specifically Chicanas. Um, According to text and past module videos, the quote, there was a lot of machismo within the Chicana movement. As there still is today, we must remember that although our cultural traditions are based on a patriarchal society, women played and continue to play an important role in our society and our community. These Chicanas fought against sexism, racism, imperialism. Now, that's the end of the quote, right? But I want to acknowledge that I'm a man myself, but I do acknowledge that women have gone under the radar and far from the spotlight. Chicanas and Latinos weren't meant just for flipping tortillas and helping out men. They were having, they have dreams, they have aspirations of their own. The only thing that stops them is the environment of being frowned upon, limited resources, and they can only get support from women who thought the same. It breaks my heart because there are gender injustices for women, right? My mom used to work at the factories and she would always face these issues all the time. Even she would go to work and always come home exhausted from work. Women who are of Hispanic origin aren't only meant for supporting men. Or like Hispanic origin aren't only meant for his supporting men or even having babies for men, but to live on to their own accord, right? My mom is an example of a strong woman who raised me all by herself. So I want to get on to module three, right? Module three, dreamers' recent past, right? So I'm kind of more of a passionate person to talk about this topic because I have like a couple of experiences about it, and so I've been knowing about the Dreamers Act for quite some time. Even in my own personal experience, I talk about it before in essays, and it's such a positive impact to the Latinx community and immigrants in general. The problem is that the US government treats it like it's a chore to establish it in the first place, not performing insufficient effort on immigrant status, right? Issues. Unfortunately, both of my parents don't qualify for the Dream Act, but I plan to do the best I can to get them, documents when I'm 21. There was this other time when I was in high school where I was preparing myself for an interview. I submitted a scholarship resume and practiced for the school interview. One of the interview questions were, how and what political climate can change our community? I didn't come prepared with this question, but I answered it quickly at the top of my head, right? Dream Act, better access to being documented, right? And the thing about that is that I was like, it was like so quickly at the top of my head, but I even had like stuff that's like, I had to think about it so quickly, but not at the same time, right? Because I've been talking about the Dream Act even before I had my scholarship appointment and interview. So because I talked about it on like assignments, right? I'm like, I had other questions that what was like really impactful, and I said the Dream Act, right? So I nailed the interview, and I answered all of their questions, but I realized that I answered the political one wholeheartedly because I know that one affects me and my family. Although I'm not qualified for it, there are immigrants who need it the most who are living through the states. I believe the Dreamers Act and DACA were necessary to be established in the first place. And I wanted to talk about misrepresentation and absence of Latino presence to like organizations. And it is quite common. According to the module text, 20 years of census data, millions of Latinx Americans choose other as their racial category on the census. Legal precedence puts Latinx individuals under umbrella of white, but many reject this decision. I've gotten so used to not seeing Latino or Hispanic as an option, so I just personally just choose white because I just look white, even though I have such American heritage. I would choose the Hispanic option whenever I could because that's kind of what I identify with. It's ethnicity rather than race that I really care about whenever I choose identity options on like a paper application or survey. Okay, so on to Module 4, education and the struggle for equality. If it wasn't for the Mendes versus Westminster case, diversified classes wouldn't even be a thing today. I'm honestly glad to have met all kinds of people. I'm friends with people who are in India, some who are in Asia, and even they are like LGBTQ, right? And I'm curious to find more people in my school from different parts of the world. I even found like French people in Cal State LA, even though I haven't really made friends for them yet, like with them yet. So hopefully I can find some more people. But I have I grew an acquaintance with like a German person. They were really cool. It was like talk about experiences and whatnot. It took multiple cases to even get where we are today, and they were mostly like rebellion towards government established laws, like the Plessy versus Ferguson case, Tate versus Hurley case, Mendes versus Ferguson case, as mentioned before. There were all cases fought against control from making whiteness as a norm, right? The Chicanx community did contribute to the civil movement, as according to the video. And I also agree. That's why we have ethnic studies today, Hispanic teachers, and also diversified community today. And we shouldn't even discredit the Chicanx community. I'm only learning until recent about how much the Chicanx people really made an impact in U.S. history. And I believe in U.S. history because Chicanx people are also Americans, but also from Mexican heritage. And how they really integrate the society we have today. I'm really learning more in depth what the community has done. So, well, that's module 4 and 5, right? I wanted to talk about more of like the East LA walkouts from 1968. Cal State LA the East LA walkouts was very close. It was like 6 miles away from my school, right? And they acknowledged this, right? And then they were the first program. I even talked about this from the first critical journal, that they were the first college to even bring up Chicanic studies. And I think that's such a important topic because whenever I go inside of the school, it's a very diversified class, or like a diversified university, right? You see murals everywhere. You have districts of like African American communities, Chicanx communities, even the trans LGBTQ communities, right? And even have their own district. And it's a very diversified university, and talks about more of like history of like social, like sociology of people, right? And I want to bring this in because I think it's very important of like what the Chicanx community has really impacted, right? And it's more of like integration of what I said, right? It's more impact on more impact, right? And that shows today what my school has done. All right, so module 6, radical healing and indigenous practices. So there were two things that I connected to when I read this module, right? The text says, however, Chicanx and Latinx communities are more likely to have a hard time accessing fresh fruits and vegetables. In many low-income and immigrant communities, few stores and markets sell fresh items compared to alcohol and processed foods within approximate distance to homes. This can result from zoning processes that place low-income residences and immigrant worker housing in areas far away from central commercial areas and restaurants. Okay, end quote. I used to go to Stater Bros and Food for Less, but my mom was having some health issues, so I brought her to Sprouts, farmers market, to make her feel healthier about eating, right? She's been like felt healthier nowadays. The problem is that the driving to Sprouts Farmers Market is pretty far, right? That grocery store is in the suburbs of Rialto, and I live in San Bernardino. It was like we were established to consume low quality products and even decreasing lifespans. And I want to get into more of that, and causing harm to low income Chicanx communities and even black individuals who live in San Bernardino. I honestly think it's unfair and how there is symbolic violence for us Chicanx or like Latinx communities. And what I mean by symbolic violence is that the system is attacking us in a ways that we don't see it on our own eyes. In my political science class, we talk about statistics on life expectancies on different neighborhoods. One black dominated neighborhood lived up to 65 years. And as on a picture on the right, it says average life expectancy in Chicago neighborhoods in 2022. Like more on the ghetto parts of the place are, 63 years old, 65 years old, man. And on white neighborhoods, like live up to 76. Like what's really going on? This shows signs of like preferred neighborhoods rather than taking care of all people to provide food, fresh food, proper ingredients, and natural foods, right? And care for all health of all people. Health is a very essential. Health is very essential for especially the Chicanx and Latinx community, and it's for all, right? For all who care about health and what they eat. And I wanted to focus on spirit, mind, and body, which comes from the module, right? Curundesmo, right? Curundesmo is one example for different herbs and practices from indigenous practices, right? And as I read from the module, right, I had some healing before, but it has some like it was a bizarre tradition to the average American, right? It's not something they're used to. And and I saw the video, and you really do have to come in with like an open mind. I saw the video demonstrating curandesmo. Some indigenous traditions are practiced using like centuries and drums and like smells and different types of chants to get, rid of like bad vibras or vibes or like a state of being, like, being sanctified or something like that. My mom at the time wanted some jewelry and supposedly felt bad vibes at the place we were living in. We went to the swap meet in Fontana. We saw this one guy who has traditional stuff on his table. He had crosses, oils, sprays, and they were even based on beliefs like fortune is coming your way in Spanish, or like women magnet or something, or like a dominator, or like money, like a money grabber or something, or like all in Spanish or something. Like you put it on yourself, and then you best believe that something's gonna happen. My mom told the guy that she felt bad vibes, and they did the whole practice, right? Or of like a small ritual, I would say, to cure her from it, or like to feel better. One part is that the guy shot up some dust through her nose for sanification, right? It was super weird, right? It was like, doesn't it feel bad? But it's for sanification, like luring away bad spirits. Then they did that to me, right? And my nose was burning for a good 2 hours, and it was like burning. I was like, ugh. Um, the powder was made of some herbs, or maybe like some like mushrooms or whatnot, according to my mom. And it was like the first time I thought, okay, when I read this module, I'm like, okay, this feels like an experience that I had, curandesmo, right? And I see how important it is to keep the tradition to this day. Like it's a field of tradition, right? And it's amazing how they keep it up to this day. Okay, so this is gonna be enough for my critical journal, and I really had fun reading all the modules and watching all the videos. I thought this was a pretty fun class, and I can't wait to do my other loteria. I can't wait to do like the loteria project that I'm gonna do in a bit, and I just really had fun with this Chicanx class, man. So I really, really thank the professor, right? And thank you for listening onto my journal. Have a great day. Bye bye.